The phone on Jeff Bezos' nightstand buzzed softly. It was past 11 p.m., and the dim glow of the screen illuminated the darkened room. Bezos, half asleep, reached for it and glanced at the notification. A message from Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, commonly referred to as MBS. There was nothing strange about this. They had exchanged messages before, discussing business and MBS's grand vision for the future of Saudi Arabia. Bezos hesitated, but then curiosity tugged at him. He tapped the message. Attached was a video file along with a casual message from the Saudi leader.
The Saudi Crown Prince's WhatsApp account was used to hack the phone of Jeff Bezos, the world's richest man.
Bezos, Saudi Arabia is lashing out at reports that the Crown Prince was behind the phone attack.
According to the Financial Times, the hack's roots trace back to Bezos and bin Salman exchanging phone numbers in Los Angeles.
Bezos ended up disclosing the affair and later accused the Saudis of gaining access to his private photos.
Jeff, all what you hear or told to, it's not true, and it's a matter of time till you know the truth. There is nothing against you or Amazon from me or Saudi Arabia.
But Bezos was determined to get to the bottom of the phone hack.
Thought you'd find this interesting, my friend. Jeff swiped to open the video. It was a promotional clip, a glossy showcase of Saudi Arabia's future, skyscrapers, desert landscapes, tourism, modernity, the type of content MBS often shared to highlight his Vision 2030 project, the kingdom's ambitious plan to diversify its economy and break away from its reliance on oil. But something was off. Just as the video neared the end, the screen flickered for a moment, as if there was a glitch. Bezos paused. His instincts told him to look closer, but the flicker was brief, and it didn't happen again. He shrugged, setting the phone down on his nightstand and falling back into the heavy silence of the night. What he didn't know was that this small interaction would change everything. For hours, his phone lay quietly next to him, but on the inside, it was no longer his own. Hidden within the harmless video was malicious software, code so sophisticated, it could silently take over the device, steal everything inside it, and feed it back to whoever controlled the program. The information began to flow out of his phone without a single warning. It took only minutes for his emails, messages, personal photos, and countless other files to be transmitted, bypassing every layer of security Bezos had in place. It was a flawless operation. By the time the sun rose, Jeff Bezos had unknowingly become the victim of one of the most brazen and sophisticated cyber attacks ever conducted against a public figure. And this was only the beginning. Days passed, and Bezos remained unaware. His life continued at its usual dizzying pace, meetings at Amazon headquarters, overseeing his space company Blue Origin, and handling his responsibilities as the owner of the Washington Post. The daily grind was relentless, but he thrived in it. But all the while, someone else now had access to every corner of his life. Then came the first real sign that something was wrong. Early one morning, his phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't MBS. It was a notification from a close friend. "You should check out the news," it read, followed by a link. Jeff clicked on it. His breath caught in his throat as he scanned the headline. "The National Enquirer exposes Jeff Bezos' affair." His private text messages were splashed across the screen, intimate personal details that should have never been made public. The story was brutal, revealing Bezos' extramarital affair in painstaking detail. And worse still, the article hinted that there were even more damning photos and messages that hadn't yet been released. It wasn't just a scandal. It was a direct attack on his personal life, his family, and his reputation. His mind raced. How had the Enquirer obtained this information? Only a handful of people had access to those messages, and they were stored securely on his phone. It didn't make sense, unless someone had gained access to his phone without his knowledge. Bezos sat in stunned silence, trying to make sense of it all. But as the day wore on, his initial shock turned into determination. He wasn't going to let this stand. In the days that followed, Bezos mobilized his resources. He hired a team of cybersecurity experts to investigate the breach. Their findings were staggering. After weeks of combing through the data logs and activity on his phone, they uncovered the source of the attack: the video message from Mohammed bin Salman. The Saudi Crown Prince had sent Bezos a malware-laden video file designed to infiltrate his phone. The spyware they identified was Pegasus, a highly advanced tool developed by NSO Group, an Israeli cyber arms firm. Pegasus wasn't just any spyware. It was top-of-the-line, military-grade software capable of hacking into a device and gaining complete control over it. Once installed, Pegasus could access everything: emails, messages, photos, location data, and even activate the phone's camera and microphone to record conversations. This wasn't the work of amateur hackers. It was the work of a state actor with the resources and motive to carry out such a precise attack. The implications were chilling. Bezos' phone had been compromised by Saudi Arabia's crown prince himself. By now, Bezos was putting the pieces together. This attack wasn't random, and it wasn't personal in the way one might expect. It was about the Washington Post. As the owner of one of the most prominent newspapers in the world, Bezos had become a target. The Washington Post had been relentless in its coverage of Saudi Arabia's involvement in the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, a journalist who had been critical of MBS and his regime. Khashoggi's assassination in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul had shocked the world and put the kingdom under intense scrutiny. The Washington Post had played a key role in keeping the story alive, with one damning article after another, exposing the brutal details of Khashoggi's murder and the crown prince's likely involvement. Now, it was clear to Bezos that MBS was seeking revenge. By hacking his phone and leaking intimate details of his personal life to the National Enquirer, MBS was sending a message: silence the Washington Post or face the consequences. But Bezos wasn't the kind of man to back down. Instead of submitting to the pressure, he went on the offensive. In a bold move, Bezos published a bombshell blog post on Medium titled, "No Thank You, Mr. Pecker." The post laid out the details of the National Enquirer's attempts to blackmail him. They had threatened to publish even more compromising material if Bezos didn't publicly state that their initial story wasn't politically motivated. But Bezos refused to play their game. Instead, he made everything public, exposing AMI's attempt to extort him. And in the post, he raised a crucial question: how had AMI obtained his private messages in the first place? He hinted at Saudi Arabia's involvement without directly naming MBS, but the implications were clear. In the wake of Bezos's revelations, the story exploded. International media picked up on the scandal, and all eyes turned to Saudi Arabia. The crown prince, who had spent years trying to cultivate an image of a modern reformer, was now being accused of orchestrating a cyber attack against one of the most powerful men in the world. But even as the evidence mounted, Saudi officials vehemently denied any involvement. They called the allegations absurd and insisted that MBS had nothing to do with the hack. In interviews, MBS himself laughed off the accusations, claiming they were nothing more than a conspiracy designed to tarnish his reputation. Yet behind the scenes, MBS was panicking. The fallout from the Khashoggi murder had already damaged his standing on the global stage, and now the Bezos hack threatened to unravel his carefully crafted public image even further. And the consequences didn't stop at the court of public opinion. Weeks after Bezos's Medium post went live, the United Nations stepped in. 2 UN officials, Agnes Callamard, the Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial Killings, and David Kaye, the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression, issued a public statement calling for an investigation into the hacking of Bezos's phone. The evidence, they said, was compelling. They believed there was a strong link between the cyber attack on Bezos and the Saudi crown prince. It wasn't just about Bezos. It was about Saudi Arabia's broader campaign to silence dissent, particularly in the wake of Khashoggi's murder. Their statement was damning. It painted a picture of a regime that was willing to go to extreme lengths to protect its image and suppress critical voices. And it highlighted the dangers of state-sponsored surveillance technology, which could be used not just against activists and journalists, but even against the wealthiest and most powerful people on the planet. As the UN called for an investigation, more and more questions began to arise. How many other people had been targeted by Saudi Arabia's surveillance efforts? Was Bezos just the most high-profile victim, or was this part of a much larger campaign? The world was watching, but Saudi Arabia remained defiant. Meanwhile, Bezos was grappling with the personal consequences of the attack. His marriage had fallen apart in the wake of the National Enquirer story, and his reputation had taken a hit. Yet, despite the personal toll, Bezos refused to be silenced. He doubled down on his commitment to the Washington Post, ensuring that the paper continued its hard-hitting coverage of Saudi Arabia and the Khashoggi case. Behind closed doors, Bezos ramped up his security measures. He worked with top cybersecurity experts to fortify his digital defenses, determined not to let anything like this happen again. He also quietly supported investigations into Saudi Arabia's use of surveillance technology, hoping to shine a light on the dark underbelly of cyber espionage. For MBS, The hack had backfired. Instead of silencing Bezos, it had emboldened him. In the months that followed, the international community continued to scrutinize Saudi Arabia's actions. Human rights organizations called for sanctions, and lawmakers in the United States demanded answers. The hack wasn't just about one man's personal data. It was about the intersection of technology, power, and freedom of the press. Bezos had become an unlikely symbol in a larger fight against authoritarian regimes that sought to use technology to control the narrative. His refusal to back down had sent a powerful message. Even the most sophisticated cyber attacks couldn't silence the truth. As for MBS, his global image was tarnished, but he remained in power. The kingdom's Vision 2030 continued to march forward, albeit under a shadow of suspicion. And while the full extent of Saudi Arabia's surveillance efforts may never be known, the Bezos hack had exposed a dangerous new frontier in the world of state-sponsored cyber warfare. For Jeff Bezos, the experience was a wake-up call. He had always known that power came with risks, but he had never imagined that those risks would extend so deeply into his personal life. Yet through it all, he had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more determined to stand up to those who sought to undermine freedom of the press and the free exchange of information. The battle wasn't over, but one thing was certain: Bezos would not be a victim again, and the world was watching.